The madness continues with even more demos to showcase from NextFest 1023. We are up to our 200th episode of Indie Games, and there'll be plenty more coming in the future. But for now, let's take a look at some of the favorites from today's episode. With this being the 200th Indie Showcase here on the channel, I wanted to give a slight speech about things. I want to thank all the developers who have submitted games over the years. At this point, we have covered over 1,000 indie games, and we are not going to be running out anytime soon. I would like to thank everyone who has reached out, hoping to get some coverage for a game, whether it's some new experimental indie game, an underrated hidden gem, or anywhere in between. A lot of my game design analysis and coverage has grown thanks to so many developers reaching out and being able to be exposed to so many different kinds of games that probably most people will never get to see or even hear of otherwise. So keep those submissions coming. Again, I don't care if you are a one-person studio, a small indie game company, you are working on the umpteenth platformer, Bullet Heaven VS-like, or some crazy city builder survival horror 4X Candy Crush Saga game. If you're looking for someone to cover your game no matter what, I am still here, and I will talk to, everyone when we get another 1,000 games in the future. We are beginning things with Magicraft. This is an action roguelite with a story that any gamer can relate to. One Friday night while playing games, we get sucked into a magical fantasy realm, and we must use magic powers in order to fight evil gods and get back home. We didn't get a chance to see the actual roguelite elements of the game, but the general gameplay is certainly interesting. You'll use a wand that you'll equip with various spells. Whatever spells or modifiers you put in your wand will affect the bullets that come out of it. So if you take the poison modifier and put it in, your bullets will now gain poison damage. And it kind of feels like a later version of the kind of spell wand crafting system of Nota. This one is definitely easier to get into. There's not as many variables to deal with. You will find different wands that will come with different recovery rates of mana, different slots for spells, and other factors, as well as passive artifacts that will equip onto your character, much like in the Binding of Isaac vein. I do like the use of the different modifiers and spells all interacting in very unusual ways, such as shooting out giant rolling boulders that cause poison to everything they hit, including yourself. Now, we didn't get to see a whole lot, again, of advanced elements in this one, but this is looking like it's going to be a very challenging and very interesting action roguelite for people looking for some spells, slinging, and roguing to do. We now turn to Ailuri, which I'll put the name and everything down below, because I'm pretty sure I butchered that. This is a kind of platforming adventure game. I don't believe this is going to be of the Metroidvania variety, but we play as an adorable red panda, who, when our parents go missing and the forest is under attack by strange monsters, it is up to us to save the day. We are armed with a normal attack, magic blast, a grapple power, and some other abilities as well. The game also boasts having a co-op mode, which we did not get a chance to see during this demo. But each level will have you exploring, looking for various characters to save, MacGuffins, and some light puzzle solving as well. It controls pretty nicely. I do like how it's a lot safer to fight enemies since you bounce off of them, so you don't have to worry about them running into you. And there seems to be some good variety in terms of the environments and hazards. Our big problem with the demo was we ran into a very nasty bug where we literally lost the ability to use the grapple, which not only removed an essential part of the platforming tech, but also the ability to solve puzzles. So we definitely had some issues there, and hopefully those will be fixed in the finished release. But this is one that it will be a very gorgeous looking action-adventure game for people to enjoy in the future. So if you enjoy cute animals running, jumping, and grappling around, then you should definitely check this one out. We now go to Mecha Ball. This is, well, if we combine, I guess, Enter the Gungeon, Sonic, and Doom Eternal into a very chaotic action roguelike. We play as a character in a mech suit who is battling out in what appears to be some kind of futuristic game show. And in order to win, we are going to have to roll, shoot, and bash our way to victory. The rules of this one is that you can equip up to 2 weapons at a time and gain special abilities. In order to recover ammo, you need to roll and bash into an enemy. Doing so will make them drop ammo for your weapons. However, if you hit an enemy who's about to attack by way of the exclamation point over their head, you will deny them, stun them, and do damage, or knock them out of the arena as you just saw right there. Your mission is to just keep going, kill all the enemies throughout each wave, to move on to the next arena, fight the bosses, and go for glory. Combat in this one is fast and very chaotic. It can be very easy to lose yourself, especially during boss fights and when bullets, explosions, and more all going around you. But once you get used to this one, it does feel really great to control, and you'll feel like a armed sonic spin of death throughout this game. Now, there is persistence in form of unlocking new weapons and so on appear in future runs, but I don't believe there's any kind of permanent unlocks or upgrades that make it like a roguelite. This is certainly shaping up to be a very interesting take, and if you're looking for a very, and I do mean a very, action roguelike, then you should definitely check this one out. We now turn to Echoes of the Living. If Tormented Souls from a few years ago was the indie kind of major take off of the Resident Evil 1 formula, then this is the indie take on the Resident Evil 2 formula. You can play as one of 2 different characters who have come to a town when a mysterious fog is infecting people and turning them into the undead, and you must once again enter a world of survival horror in order to escape and figure out what is going on. So with that description, you should pretty much have everything you need to know about what Echoes of the Living is all about. This is survival horror as you will explore, try to make use of every single bullet you're going to find, collect miscellaneous items, solve puzzles, and do all that surviving and horroring. The general aesthetics of this one look really nice. Every enemy has that kind of detailed, disturbing look to them. Combat is just okay. If you're looking for any major reinventions of the formula, I didn't quite see it from the demo. You can equip melee weapons, but I found them to be very janky and could just not hit anyone with them. The exploration is once again go room to room, try and find keys and shortcuts and all that. You are limited by inventory space, but you will be able to craft different ammos, find new guns, so on and so forth. So we didn't really, again, get a chance to see if there's anything unique that this game brings to the survival horror formula, but if you're someone who is missing out on a new kind of older take on survival horror, I would at least give this demo a check and keep an eye out for the future game. We have more horror next with Hollow Cocoon. When we arrived at our grandparents' house, we are doing this after our grandmother has been found hurt and is now in the hospital, and we are dealing with some bad blood following the passing of our grandfather and mother. But when we arrive at the home, strange things begin to happen, and of course we are completely alone and must fend for ourselves. The aesthetics and art style are really well done, providing that kind of very realistic look to the home and neighboring village. There's also a very addicting 10 yen game that you can play if you can find the money for it. The main thing from this demo is that I really didn't get a chance to see what is the major gameplay loop of this one. You can hide from the enemy, but I do not know there's any combat or advanced elements like that. The story page does boast that there are multiple endings to this one, and there could be something here for those of you looking for a kind of rural countryside take on Japanese horror. We now have Soul Spectrum. This is a puzzle game. We are trapped in a prison by account that we have eternal life. And in order to get out, we are going to use that life to die, and die again in order to solve the myriad of puzzles. How this one works is that your form comes in 4 different varieties: human, zombie or skeleton, a kind of spirit umbra, and then an actual ghost itself. You die in a specific order, which will affect which ones you'll turn into. Go in the order of human, skeleton, umbra, ghosts. Each form comes with different abilities, and more specifically, different environmental and enemies will kill them. In order to solve the puzzles, you'll need to figure out in what order do you interact with objects, as well as how you're going to go to places and which form you're going to be in, and also knowing when to kill that form in order to swap down. In order to kind of build back up, you'll need to find these kinds of magic candles. Every time you light one, you'll gain kind of one form. And the puzzle solving is going to be about you exploring these different areas and trying to make do with things. I don't believe there's any collectibles or bonus things to find in this one, but the puzzle solving is very interesting, using your different forms and again the different ways of killing yourself in order to solve these puzzles. In terms of difficulty, I would say this is on the moderate to moderately challenging side. Once you know where you're going and in what form, it's just a matter of execution. The general gameplay itself is pretty much on the simple side. But I was getting into the story and puzzle solving for this one. So if you're looking for a very unorthodox way of solving puzzles, then you should definitely check this one out. We have another game involving the dead and undead with Never Mourn. This one is an action roguelike that in a way reminds me a little bit of Sacrifice from back in the day. You are a necromancer and you must fight your way through hordes of enemies. But anytime you kill an enemy, you can resurrect them as your minion. How this one plays out is you have 2 kind of forms of power: your offensive spells on the bottom left and your healing spells on the bottom right. You use your healing spells to support your minions, as well as bring them back to life. You use your painful or offensive spells to do damage to the enemies and help your minions out during combat. As you go through each one of the waves, you'll be able to unlock upgrades that can make your spells better, upgrade your minions, find kind of persistent currency, and so on. The combat is a little bit on the floaty side. Enemies can easily mob you, and it's definitely hard to avoid damage, even with the dodge. I like the idea of having kind of like 2 tiers of minions, with like kind of like your super heavy minions, which are the elites, and you have to keep them alive because you can only resurrect so many of them in a single kind of floor or map. I don't know again where the persistent elements are going to lead, but this one does play very differently. So if you enjoy being a necromancer and looking for an action roguelike, I would at least check out the demo for this one. We now have some deck building with Phantom Rose 2 Sapphire. This is a deck building roguelike, where our element here is that instead of having a purely randomized deck, instead you'll be able to choose which cards or abilities you can make use of during combat. They're separated into kind of offensive and support skills. When you play a card, it goes into cooldown for a fixed number of turns. Also, during each round of combat, where you can place cards in relation to your enemy changes, and there are a lot of debuffs and buffs that can manipulate the field and manipulate either side. As you play, you'll find more items. There is persistence in the form of unlocking additional upgrades and features using sapphires. There are progressive difficulty options which we didn't get to see in the demo itself, but there are certainly some interesting things going on under the hood for this one, and a lot of the challenge is going to be figuring out how to deal with the myriad of enemy effects. For instance, I got a card that lets me reflect debuffs on my character to the enemy, but with it being on a cooldown means you have to know when to use it properly. And while the basic difficulty doesn't seem that bad, This does seem like there is potential for a very challenging deck builder, especially if you're going for the higher difficulties and trying to maximize the best use of your deck. So if you are in the mood for some deck building, then I would definitely check out this demo. We now have our final game of today's video, Vexlands. This is a forager-like. You have been trapped in a mysterious land surrounded by hexes, and the only thing that you can do is to harvest resources and basically buy your way around. If you played Forager, then the basics of this game should be quite familiar to you. Everything you do will give you experience, which you can then use to apply to different town points that will gain you different effects. Your goal is to unlock more of the map by completing tasks set by kind of the trading posts. The more gold you have, you can unlock more hexes. Hexes can open up either more resource nodes, specific quest givers, unique situations, dungeons, more, and all that good stuff. And just like Forge and other kind of idle or management style games, you'll eventually unlock more recipes, more resource constructors or producers, which will get you further or let you do more things in the world. I really like the pixel art in this one, and the game has this very relaxing vibe to it. My main issue from playing this one on stream, maybe playing some more on my own, is that while the early game is quite bare, I don't know what this game is doing in the mid to late game. It is very grindy at the start, as you're just going to keep going back and forth between harvesting resources, producing them, harvesting, producing, and just keep fulfilling the needs of the merchant posts. I would like to see kind of like a middle tier or mid-tier production, something to kind of cut down on some of the repetitive tasks as you get further in, kind of like our logistic bots from Novalands. So the game can keep the grinding and harvesting exciting from beginning to end, and this could be a really solid follow-up, or spiritual follow-up I should say, to Forager. So if you like constructing things and doing it in a very relaxing and low-stakes setting, I would definitely check this one out. And with that, that's going to do it for another night of our Best of Next Fest showcase. This is still going on, folks, and who knows when it's going to end. That's going to do it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to do the YouTubing stuff people tell you to do. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on design, check out my books wherever they are sold. Visit our Discord and Patreon, and come back for discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where some of the art and science of games.